Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Many roster changes going down across the entirety of the North American VALORANT scene right now, especially in the Tier 2 side we shall dive into, but also an update on the Sentinels story. We've heard rumours over the past couple of weeks that TenZ might be stepping out of the team at some point in the near future, but George Geddes says no for now. Marved has got to not be in the starting team because he simply doesn't have the visa to allow him to presently compete. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, a bit of drama here with Tom and Mitch, two of the best casters in the European side, inform that they won't be attending Japan as broadcast talent. So, interesting story for multiple reasons. I imagine that for Japan, right, the Tokyo event, Masters event in Tokyo coming up in June, I believe, they're going to focus towards more Pacific-based talent and some others. So I think it was probably inevitable, and this is what Riot do, right, with even some of their best casters. Sometimes they just won't invite them, and they will, basically just keep them on their toes type thing, so they know that they're not always guaranteed. It's interesting the way that Riot deal with their talent, it's got to be said. So they still want to attend ideally in some capacity, but unfortunately they won't be there with Riot Games. Now Mitch actually says it's going to be strange watching this from home, but you can't win them all. We thought about going to Japan on our own, but after paying $10,000 for our US visas for champs later this year, the bill isn't manageable alone. If you're thinking about on-site coverage, please reach out. And Linus is like, Riot doesn't pay your visa. Normally they do, but with the global recession, I believe it was either we pay it or we don't work in NA for the foreseeable. At least that is what we are told. So this is very interesting, right? Now, I guess technically Mitch and Tom are probably freelancers, so it might not be out of the realms of possibility that organizations will say, look, well, you've got to pay for your visas so you can actually work here. But the fact that they're paying like 10 grand for these visas and Riot isn't covering this with all the money that Riot are making from the skin sales and stuff is it's classic Riot Games, to be honest, the way they manage their talent. But it's still interesting, as Mitch says, that this is apparently a cost-cutting exercise by Riot Games. They would usually pay for it, but because there's a recession, they can't, and therefore they won't, and therefore these guys can't afford to go to Japan on their own dime because they paid all their money already for their US visas so they can work at the World Championship, which is going to be in LA. So, yeah, interesting story from multiple angles. Intrigued to your thoughts on that one in the comment section below. Also, this from Durga as we go to dive into some issues with teams. I miss Icebox, he says, but yeah, the reality is Fnatic are going to be rather good no matter what, but some teams that aren't were getting called out by TenZ, actually, the head coach of Moist Moguls, Moist Esports. As he says, some of these VCT managers and coaches must be so depressed realizing the transfer window is closed and they have to stick with their terrible decisions they made for the whole split in LCQ. Scouting and roster building is so important. Don't just pick up your friends. Look at Fnatic, Loud, etc. and what they are achieving despite the changes that they have made. He also goes on to talk about, or kind of at them, he says, Mitch, and try this easy step to get hate from Spanish, French, Brazilian and Indonesian fans all in one go. So calling out various teams in those set regions. So interesting comment though, right, about the fact that the transfer window is closed. I don't know what you guys think about whether it should be or not, because I know that in some esports and sports they have different opinions on whether transfers can happen any time and it's kind of a free fall. If you want to make a change you can and you're absolutely free to do so, or whether there are set roster change periods. Arguably there should be at least one in the middle of the season, to be honest, where they can make moves. The issue is though, for the way this season is developed, is that there's one split, there's one LCQ, there's Masters, there's Champions. There really isn't any changes to be made. You made your decisions in the off season and you're stuck with them for the entire year unless you have a good bench player, a good substitute like Marved, we'll discuss in a second, that could potentially come into your roster. So yeah, calling out some of these terrible decisions being made, and it is going to come back to bite some of the worst teams that they simply can't even try and improve, right? Like they made their bed, now they've got to lie in it type thing and try and work it out with these rosters. Now yesterday we got a series, NaVi versus Heretics. This was a 2-1 because Lotus was actually 13-9 for Heretics with a good first half, but Pearl was 13-3 and Ascent was 13-2. Like this was absolutely disgusting. Heretics could do nothing at all. Keelox had a terrible series, and what was that, 0.03 rating. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it on the Jets. So yeah, it wasn't pretty for him. And over the series, yeah, 29-46. He had a rough time. Obviously though, when you're losing 13-3, 13-2, it's not just one player's fault, right? The entire team's getting fried if that's the case. I don't know if there was this from Zeke. I thought it was quite nice from Zeke actually saying, look, don't talk anything to Keelox for the last map. The calls were trash. We were all basing each other while Keelox tried to make space for us. So, played terrible as a team. We'll try and come back stronger going forwards. So, good stuff for NaVi and Angel. I know that he's having a hard time with all the stuff happening in Ukraine over the last few days. So good job on them getting the victory, but I wouldn't be surprised here if TenZ a second ago was discussing seeing the Heretics situation as one example of teams that are looking to make changes, but unfortunately cannot, because they're simply not allowed to. However, in Tier 2, teams are allowed to make changes, and these are some of the changes being made. Now, first of all, this clip at the top here with Dicey. So Dicey, we know, was part of FaZe. Dicey may now no longer be part of FaZe because he was streaming last night, as you guys can see here at the top, and FaZe on the right-hand side were actually scrimming. So FaZe was scrimming and Dicey was on stream at the same time, not playing in said scrims. That's got to mean something. The other thing to note here is Redux scrimming with the Oxygen guys. That was mentioned last night as a possibility there. Pancake's also part of Aura Esports possibly now as well. So those are some changes happening. There's also the possibility of Dazzle and Rossi coming in to join the Turtle Troop guys. So last night there were these scrims as well leaked with Weeded here up against the XMM guys, right, the Moist Moguls guys. Tan, as we just mentioned, Flyer of course there as well. But Dazzle and Rossi, we know that Rossi was on FaZe, and there's some questions whether that will continue. More than likely not. So, you know, lots of changes in Tier 2, which I think is necessary and quite exciting, but it's a little bit interesting to me that in Tier 1, that simply is not a possibility. So if any of the Tier 1 teams fail, they are kind of screwed for the rest of the season, unless, of course, they have a valuable player on their bench, as Sentinels do. So George Geddes does an interesting video last night, and I'm sure there's more of these to come, so feel free to check out his channel, discussing the TenZ situation. The discussion has been the last few days, is TenZ going to be replaced at some point? Is that happening already? Is it going to happen in the near future? We know that Noyan, for example, kind of Brazilian leaker type guy, was suggesting that at some point he expects TenZ to be gone from the team to take care of Kaide with everything that she's presently going through, which, you know, and also with his poor performance the other day, people wondered whether that's going to be happening. The issue that Sentinels have, if that is going to be the case, there's also been the talk about, you know, zyppan and graduating high school and whether he's going to have to step out from that. I know there's been some rumors about that over the last couple of weeks as well. But if Sentinels do want to do anything with their roster either now or in the near future, Marved will have to be eligible to play. And as we saw from Lena say from Sentinels a couple of weeks ago now, he did not have his visa at the time. He's Canadian, of course, needs a good working visa to play in these matches. And that 2 weeks ago, he didn't have his visa. And I kind of imagined over the last couple of weeks, progress would have been made by Sentinels on that front because they might need him at some point, even in the very near future. So surely they've got to think about this quickly. But as George Geddes says, as with his information as of yesterday, there is still no visa for Marved.
Is Marved playing tomorrow? No, Marved actually, he's not even in the US yet. He doesn't have his visa. We're working on that.
Marved actually does not have a visa to compete in VCT Americas. So how this kind of stuff works is, in order to compete in the league, you need to have a certain visa in order to be eligible to like work in the area, work in the country. And Marved is a Canadian resident, as you guys know, and you must basically have the correct paperwork. And according to information that I know, he is currently in the process of getting that visa. So, you know, we may see Marved in the future. That's 100%, you know, could definitely happen. Perhaps towards the middle of the season or the tail end of the season, I'm not sure. We could definitely see him play, but as of right now, Marv does not have a visa to actually be able to compete under Sentinels. So that's the reason why you're not seeing him, you know, play for the team. I definitely do see Marv playing personally. I think he will play towards the tail end of the season. That's just my prediction. So yes, I am guessing for that one. But I do think that, you know, when it comes to Marv and it comes to TenZ, as of right now, nothing is really going to change.
So George kind of guesses right towards the end of the video that he does expect Marv to get into this team at some point in the kind of next couple of months, and Marv seemingly does want to return to the team, and it might be necessary that they make a change of Marv even on a short-term basis relatively soon, depending on the situation with TenZ and, you know, elsewhere. The issue is, though, they've got to get his visa sorted quick. 2 weeks ago, we heard, I think it was 12 days ago from Lena, that he didn't have his visa when they played their first match right of the split, and we wondered, oh, is Marv going to come in? And she said, no, it's not happening. He can't play. He has no visa. And apparently, as of today, it's still the same story. So this is a concern for Sentinels because they might well need him at some point, but right now that is not going to be happening. And just to close out with some nice power rankings here, I thought was pretty funny. Definitely a match that I would pay to see right now is Evil Geniuses versus Carmine Corp. These are the plat chat rankings in North America or the Americas. So we've got Furia, Leviathan, Loud, NRG. That's your kind of top four, with South America absolutely killing it right now, and I think for good reason. Then 100 Thieves in 5th. Then Sen, that down, Cloud9 in 7th, then MRBR and Crew, and then in their own tier right at the bottom, Evil Geniuses. So, I mean, yeah, no real surprise, but impressive stuff regardless. And it's interesting how a lot of the North American franchise teams are very much closely combined here, whereas South America is either very good or not particularly good. And this is their European version, with Fnatic #1 clear of everybody else, and I think for good reason. Then NaVi, Giants, Foot, Vitality, Liquid, and Koi, and then further down than that, BBL, Heretics, and then Karmine Corp in their entirely separate ranking, which is again pretty impressive. So Karmine Corp versus EG would be a battle for the ages right now. So very much enjoyed your thoughts and all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.